I was telling Pastor Bob Wine earlier this morning that I wish there was some way that all of you could have been on the platform at the end of. Thank you, thank you so much. Have been on the platform with me at the end of last night and saw what I saw, what you could see from here, what was happening there. Uh, and I think there's something powerful about simply saying what? Thank you. So we talked about I'm going to Rome. Thank you. I was sitting over there earlier just uh, reflecting, and my mind went to when I was a pastor going to speak at conferences, but before that, just going to a conference such as this, going there depressed and coming away suicidal. Going there, most conferences start about what? About Monday or so, and you just had a bad day. Uh, and if whoever this is, if you don't mind, is going to bug me the whole time. So I'm going to do like you all do, leave the trash in the pulpit. So you go to places like this, and you have a speaker who's up there who's talking about, all of that. I would talk, I'd had speakers who would talk about, and my staff this and my staff this, and I'm saying to myself, I'm staff. Whenever we have a staff meeting, we're all there. I can have a staff meeting at 3 in the morning. We did not allow for tardyism. We didn't allow for absenteeism. We were all there. Uh, yeah. You remember, just opening the church, turning on the light, turning the heat, locking it back up, making the announcements, doing the praise and worship. I learned 3 chords, C, F, and G, and we sang everything in that. Uh, yeah. And then you introduce yourself. The next voice you're going to hear. Please welcome your pastor. You receive the offering. You do everything. You do everything. Anybody know what I'm talking about over here? And then you go home, and then you wonder what happened. Did anything really happen? And I think a time like this ought to be more of a time of refreshing. A time that says, I can do this. A time where you can bring your burdens and not necessarily leave your burdens here, but know what to do with your burdens. A time that gives you some strategy, some way of thinking, some way of moving forward with what God has called you to do. So I want to thank Pastor Bob and Pastor Kearney for inviting me here. It's been a wonderful time. You warmed it up yesterday. What did happen today? I mean, it's just like, it's cold out there. That's all I can say. It's cold out there. So yesterday I started talking to you, so I'm going to pick it up where we were. Is that okay with you all? All right. So yesterday we started talking about the first P, which is what? Product. So every church has a product. Every place has a product. And then your product defines how big your church is going to get. For example, when I was pastoring, I was a nurturing pastor. A nurturing pastor. That means I visited people in their homes. That means if anybody was sick in the hospital, I was there. That means I nurtured people. I was not a gatherer. I was a nurturer. The hardest sermons for me to preach when I was pastoring was get saved. Evangelistic sermons. All of my messages were encouraging sermons. All of my messages were building people up. All of my messages were God is with you, you can do it. And affirming messages. So very few people got saved in my ministry because that was not my my lane. So if I was still pastoring, I can tell you with my product. My product was, you come to this church and you're going to get phenomenal pastoral care. So with that model, my church today might have been 200. Is that making sense to you? Because that was my product. My product would define who's going to come and who's going to stay. But they've got to have a need. Are you following me? They've got to have a need before they realize that I can provide them pastoral care. So if they came in not needy, so that culture created a group of people who looks to me to help them with their what? Needs. And then look, a lot of stuff comes to you, this hindsight is what, 2020? So what starts happening is I had a need to be needed. They had a need to be helped. So there were two needy people. It's like two ticks on a dog. You following me? Do you see how quickly it can become dysfunctional? Because going to the hospital was not just to visit with them, not just to pray with them, but being there. Oh, Pastor, thank you for being here. Somehow filled my tank. So I became as needy as they were. So your product starts defining the size of your church. Your product starts defining who's going to come to your church. Your product. So when I was pastoring, I didn't raise any leaders. I raised an army of followers. I mean, I had a church in which I asked people to do something, they were all in. But I was it. So it grew to my capacity. Everyone's got a capacity. Everything has a capacity. This room has a capacity. Every place, your cell phone battery has a capacity. How much you can get done in a day has a capacity. Just everything has a capacity. And so my product defined who I was, what my growth was going to be, the kind of people who are going to come to my church, the kind of people who are going to stay at my church, the kind of people those people are going to invite to the church. You see how this all kind of toggles right into that? So you got to know what is your product. That is why churches that are leading with children have no limit on them. That is why they have no barriers. That is why people come and get service. So that's your product. The next word I want to talk to you about is process. Product, and the next word is what? Process. Process is how we do things, how things get done. For example, how you do your meetings, how you do your services, how do you engage your time, how you make decisions. Let's talk about culture just for 30 seconds. Nothing defines your culture more than how you make decisions. The speed of decisions, the people involved in the decision making, because decisions tell us what is important to you. So your culture is set by decision making. And who are the real deciders? Are the real deciders the people in the room or who's married to them? How many of you know you can have a board who have no voice? They're people at home. Tell them what to do. Could be a he, could be a she. So I'm not, that's not the issue. The issue is just because somebody's got a position. I remember in my church there was a family from hell. There's no other way to put it. There's no way I can. Well, never mind. So their ministry was to run preachers off. That was their ministry. And I remember our first business meeting. In those days they used to vote on the preacher every year. And they could nominate another preacher from the floor. And, Very interesting days. And you had to get 75% of the vote. Hell. So I remember we were having our business meeting, and the board was all in agreement, and the positional leaders had made the whatever choices needed to be made. But there she was, sitting right there, and she just went like, She never raised her hand, never made a motion, never made a comment. Just went, And immediately I knew this is dead. Now, she had no position in the church. You have people like that in your churches who have no position, but they have influence. So the process means, do you know who your influencers are? Let me tell you, your informal influencers will have greater influence than your formal influencers. So you think just because the board has supported you on that you are home free. Not so. So you've got to know who your informal influencers are. And you've got to have conversations with them and get it to a place where it becomes their idea, because your informal influencers are influencing the influencers. You just need to know that. And the smaller the church, the greater that happens. The larger the church gets, nobody cares who's on the board. So in a small church, board members feel important. In a large church, it's like, okay, I'm on the board, but nobody knows. In a small church, you can elect board members. In a large church, if you're having 2-3 services on the weekend, you can't hardly vote on anybody because nobody knows who's there in each of the services. Each church service is really a church of its own. So the process starts breaking down. The process of alignment, the process of making sure that communication is flowing in the right direction. Let me talk to people here who are not senior pastors, A process. Never surprise your pastor. It never goes good. Just know that. I don't care how wonderful and brilliant your idea might be, just stick it in a back pocket somewhere. And talk about it privately. Never surprise the senior pastor. You always want to have that sidebar. So there are 3 meetings. I'm talking about process now. There's the meeting before the meeting, and number 3 is the meeting after the meeting. Somebody tell me which is the most important meeting. Meeting before the meeting. Which is the least important meeting? The meeting. The second most important meeting is the meeting after the meeting. Because that's where people are in their cars calling each other. I'm just telling you how human nature works. I don't care how saved you are, sanctified you are, how many tongues you talk in, and how prophetic or pathetic you are. Doesn't matter. So what we do as leaders is we spend so much time on the meeting, on the train. I want to spend obsessive amount of time on the meeting before the meeting. Because if the meeting before the meeting is good, then your meeting has a possibility of going better, and you'd better have a plan for your meeting after the meeting. So the whole notion of, well, I'm preparing for the meeting, that's where decisions are not made over there. Decisions are made before the meeting and after the meeting, and the meeting is the least important of the 3 things. So that's part of the process. You've got to know how you're going to get the information out. So if it affects other people, let me see if I can draw this over here. Let me do it this way. So let's just say this is the church in general. This is the church. And let's just say here are the volunteers. let's just say here is the board, and let's just say this is you, the senior leadership. And a decision is made over here. A decision is made over here. If you don't have a thought-through communication strategy, and information leaks to over here, without going through the protocols here, you have created a monster for yourself. Imagine for a moment. So, here's a meeting going on, and there's some decision made about, say, the women's ministry. It's not a bad decision, it's a good decision. It's a very supportive decision. But here is Sister Mary, who was in charge of the ladies' ministry. She's parked right over here. Somebody from here, because you're so excited about this decision, start talking about it over here. So this is Mary, this is Susie. Susie runs into Mary in the restroom. When ladies meet, it's an experience. Yeah, men and it's the second most important room in your church is the ladies' room. Can I just talk about that for a minute? For example, if my wife Brenda and I went out for dinner with Sister Kearney and Brother Bob, so Kearney says, I'm going to the restroom. My wife says, I'll come with you. Bob says, I'm going to the restroom. Even I might have to go, I'll hold it. Anybody know what I'm talking about? It's like, no, man, you come back. I can talk about the 5 most important rooms in your house, but that's not what I'm talking about over here. I might talk about that. Who knows? I'm rambling. Who knows? So Susie runs into Mary in the restroom. Susie says, I'm so excited. We're going to have another retreat, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So she's all excited about the whole thing there. Mary has no idea what Susie's talking about, because Susie has insider information because she's married over here, and pillow talk happened. So either Mary is going to get all ticked off, but if Mary is smart, she's going to play it off like, yeah, that's going to be wonderful. I don't know what you're talking about, but it's going to be so good. So, thank you, sir. Adam, right? Adam has been on the sound. Adam has been everywhere. We are in the mess in the world because of Adam. So now Mary is ticked off. Mary is not ticked off about your decision. Somebody tell me why Mary ticked off. Thank you. So unless you have a cascading communication going on, forget about if you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, Blue Party, Coffee Party, Tea Party, doesn't matter. That's what's in the news today. What got leaked where? Who didn't know about it? Who should have known about it? Most of your challenges can be traced back to this simple diagram I've drawn for you. It's what we call a communication cascading strategy. Who needs to know when and in what order? If you were really smart, what you would have done is invited Mary into the decision room. Asked Mary her opinion. Included Mary in the process. And let Mary become your ambassador at large. And then it goes down like that. Unless you have instructions here that to your board members, don't go and talk to your wife or your husband. You're going to run into this again and again. She may post it on Facebook. Susie and Mary reads it on Facebook for the first time. Do you think that's a good day in heaven? So there's some, let me give you 2-3 rules for boards. I'm talking about process now. 2-3 rules for boards. One rule is whatever we talk about here stays here. Now, culture is created by 2 things. By what you reward and what you punish. Culture is taught only 2 ways. What is rewarded and what is punished. So when you find out that somebody who was in a confidential meeting, that somehow it got out, you've got to, in your next meeting, sit down and say, ladies and gentlemen, we talked about an item ABC. And it was, that information was out. I just want to know which one of you put it out there. And just sit quietly after that. First 30 seconds, nobody's going to say anything. Just let the silence grow. So because if this is happening, then our trust goes down. We are not sure which one of you is putting it out there. So unless you call people into accountability and you just gloss over it, that will continue to happen. And it might have happened in a smaller area, but one day it's going to happen in a big area. And then you'll be sorry that you did not nip it in the bud. You keep feeding that chimpanzee, it's going to become a gorilla. We have created our own monsters because we have looked the other way. Another rule is no names, no talk. You can't have a board meeting in which they say things like, some people are saying. I have heard out there. They. If someone's saying they are saying, you're looking at they. I remember we were having we had a death in our church. We had a death in our church. It was in the middle of the week. This is before Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those kind of things. It was just basically desk phones and phone trees. Remember those things? So the funeral was in the middle of the week, so we got the message out as best as we could. So we were in a board meeting, and this board member says, some people are upset that they did not get the information about the funeral. They wanted to be at the funeral, did not know about the funeral. So, we talked a little bit about the information. And then I said to the brothers and sisters, we cannot talk about this. What do you mean, Pastor, we can't talk about this? Because you're not giving us names. At that time, they become very sanctimonious. Like, they go through this little dramatical angst. Like, I have not checked with them, and, I don't want to betray them and their confidence. So that went on. So I said to them, hey, listen, we'll wait till next month. Get permission from them, because no names, no talk. At this level of the church, we're going to have names. So I just kept my eye on that board member, and after a while, after much squirming and, all the drama that goes with it, all the body language and all the shifting from this cheek to that cheek and this hand to that hand to, all that kind of stuff. I knew he was going to bring it up again. He brought it up at the end. He said, well, I don't have the permission, but I can give their name. So, okay, put their name. As soon as he said the name, 2 other board members said, not true. One of them said, I saw him in the grocery store, because we only had one little grocery store in the whole town called Harding's. Everybody, if I wanted to do visitation, I just got there 5 o'clock every evening, saw all my church members right there. Yeah, I saw all the beer and wine in their thing there, and I followed to the wine household. So Another board member said, I left a note on their door. Remember when you used to leave notes on people's doors? I left a note on their door. Now, that one simple rule, no names, no talk, helped us to not allow ambiguous, vague, I don't want to call them accusations, but innuendos to float around. At this level, you got to be willing to talk with names openly. So it's the process of how you do things. The process of how you put people into leadership. The process of how you do your church services. The process of who gets to do what in church. So everything has processes built into it. So there are three things that we're talking about here. The product, so you know what you are. And the process is how you do that. Number three is people. Number three is what? People. Now, let me come back here. So if the product is the what, the process is the how, the people would be the who. I'm going to give you a scale of difficulty. This is the easiest. This is the next harder. You see the train? This is the hardest. So when Kearney was up here talking about the turnaround church, you need to know this. The hardest decisions you will ever make are people decisions. The hardest decisions you're going to make are people decisions, especially people who've been there with you for a minute, especially people with whom you have history, especially people who can look back to and say, remember, Pastor, when we, who have stories with you. People decisions. Now, the challenge with people decisions is everybody knows who's got to go. Everybody knows who's got to go. Everybody knows who's incompetent. Everybody knows who's a stick in the mud. I'm looking for Terry. Where's Terry? Oh, there he is. Okay. Stick in the mud has moved that way. So, everybody knows who's not making it happen. Everybody knows who's the slow one. Everybody knows who keeps talking about it but never does anything. Everybody knows who's got to go. It is no secret. You don't have to pray about it. You don't have to fast about it. Everybody knows who's got to go. As you're sitting here right now, I can't ask that question, so I can't go there. How many of you have secular jobs, not church jobs? Okay, quite a few of you. Very good, about half of you. I'm going to ask you all a question. Today is what? Today is Wednesday. If I was to authorize you that when you go back to your jobs tomorrow, without any impunity, without anybody pushing back, with nothing negative happening, and without anybody making the decision for you, you can walk in there and fire anybody you want to. How many of you know now who you're going to fire tomorrow? Can I see your hands? Same hands go up. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. So listen to what I have to say next. The longer you keep people like that around you, the loser is you. I'm going to say it again. The longer you keep people like that around you, the loser is you. Because people are asking two questions. Does my pastor see what I see? Not doing anything about that? Second question, which is even more harmful. Doesn't my pastor see what we see? In both cases, the loser is you. So we allow people with bad attitudes. We allow people who are jerks and jerkesses. You don't want to leave anybody out. I don't want any lady to say, what about us? What about us? Here you go. The longer you put up with people like that, and you know what we do in church? Instead of marginalizing them, we platform them even more. We take the name from the pulpit. Oh, so glad to have Sister Susie. She's a jerkess. We give them time to sing and testify and lead worship and prayer, make announcements. We think like if we did this, the longer you humor the chimpanzee, it is trending to be a gorilla. So what we do is we create our own monsters. And that is why what Kearney was saying, courage and discernment is so important. People, everybody knows who is the weak link. Everybody knows who's not doing it. And everybody knows that you're not doing anything about it. Now let me tell you the difference there from a pastor's point of view and from everybody else's point of view. If you are a senior pastor, God gives you that crazy supernatural grace that allows you to love them, tolerate them, work with them, pray with them, bring them to a retreat. But that's the grace just on you. Listen to your husband or your wife. They keep telling you, cut her loose. Cut her loose. Because the longer you're doing that, the harder it's going to be. I'm spending extra time there because that's the hardest decision you're going to make. People's decisions are the hardest decision you're going to make. Let me talk about hiring and firing. Be quick to fire and slow to hire. When's the best time to fire somebody? The first time it goes through your mind. Because after that, you're looking for reasons to keep them. In my work, I've been doing this for about 30 years now. In my work, I've helped pastors fire. When I fire, I'm talking about not just paid staff. I'm talking volunteers as well. I've helped pastors fire thousands of people all over the world. Literally thousands. At one church, we fired 22 paid staff in one afternoon. Oh, effectiveness went up just like that. Just driftwood, just occupying space. Last week, I helped a church fire 7 people in one day. So I asked the pastor the simple question, now that they're not there, what's not getting done? Oh, everything's getting done. So you're saving money and don't have to put up with that drama? Yeah. I have yet to meet a pastor who regretted firing someone. By firing, I'm not just talking about paid staff. I'm just talking about volunteers too. I have yet to find a pastor who's regretted letting somebody go. The number one regret that almost 100% of those pastors have, can someone tell me? Why didn't I do this when? Sooner. So let me tell you why pastors don't do that. Because every time you make a hard people call, you're going to lose some good people along with them. There's always going to be blood on the floor. You cannot do what you're doing as a pastor and not have blood on the floor. Please hear me. The Bible says without the shedding of blood. Hopefully more of theirs than yours. You can minimize the bleeding, but there shall be bleeding. On the first night, I reminded you, if you're not bleeding, you're not leading. So you will have that moment. You will have a bunch of those moments. So the whole essence is, okay, let me illustrate this way. Let's just say I have cancer on the tip of this finger. Cancer on the tip of this finger. Cancer on the tip of this finger. The doctor says I can take the cancer off. I can cut it. Somebody who's, none of us are medical doctors, I don't think, or especially oncologists. So remember, it's the first inch of the finger that has cancer in it. Somebody tell me, how much is the doctor going to take off? Till here? Till here? To the next index? The point I'm trying to make is the doctor is going to cut off some good flesh with the cancerous flesh. So when people leave, they leave in clusters. Let me back up. I'm going to come back to this cancer thing in just a minute. When people come to your church, I'm talking about process. When people come to your church, they come individually. Young, old, married, single, people with children, no children, divorced, remarried, educated, uneducated, business people, job people, homemakers. So they come as individuals. But when they leave in clusters. They'll always take somebody else with them. And so pastors don't make the people call because they know what I call collateral damage. If it was just getting Susie out of the way, it would be one thing. But, Susie and her husband and their children and her son-in-law is the youth pastor and her, daughter is leading the children's ministry. And they pay about $12,000 a year into our budget. And it just gets messy. But you will always lose good flesh. Now, if you keep your integrity, a good amount of the good flesh is going to come back to you. Because if you give them, they left because of their relationship with this person. But once that relationship cools off, because their commonality was they were in the same place. But once that relationship starts cooling off and they start getting perspective, they start seeing what really happened, they will drift back. So make sure you don't burn any bridges and you allow them to come back with dignity. Not necessarily in the same position, but with honor, respect, and dignity. You have a pathway available for them to come back to you. I want to ask you a question. Imagine you went to the doctor today and the doctor said to you, you got cancer, you got cancer. You see, you got cancer in your shoulder, you got cancer in your shoulder. But it's all operable. I can remove all of it. I can do surgery and remove all the cancer from your shoulder. I have an opening next Monday. Somebody died, so you have an opening. That's how you get an opening. Somebody had to vacate. I have an opening next Monday, and after that, the next opening I have is in June. Question for you. Which opening are you going to take? Which one? The closest available, right? You have two-legged cancers in your churches. I'm going to put a comma there and go back. And why would you do the surgery the closest? Because if you didn't do surgery, what would happen? Cancer would do what? Spread. So there are two-legged cancers in your church. Either you're going to do surgery right now, or it's going to spread. So if it is on my shoulder right now, And the doctor can just make a big old hole there and remove it. But if I waited, I might lose a whole arm. And eventually it would do what? It would do what? Kill me. Sisters and brothers, the challenge is not that you don't know who the cancer is. You don't need a consultant to come in and tell you that. You know that. You don't even have to pray about it. So don't hide behind prayer. I need to say that one more time for us spirit-filled folk. You know, when you ask someone to do something and they say to you, thank you, Pastor, let me pray about it. All they're saying is, I want to say no. I don't know how to say no. I'll figure it out in 3 days. And then I'll tell you as I was praying. So we know how to hide behind prayer. But pastoring is not for wimps. Pastoring calls for more courage than people realize. And so what happens in church life is we keep putting off the surgery. We keep putting off the surgery. In the meantime, cancer is spreading, cancer is spreading, cancer is spreading, cancer is spreading. And by the time you get to, I got to do something about this. You will get to that one day and blow a gasket. And I got to do something about it. But then, now we got to take the entire shoulder off and the entire arm has to be amputated, which could have been done earlier on. So some of you are sitting over here listening to me saying, I know who the cancer is. This is what I want you to do with that piece of information. You need to start thinking about what would happen if I did not deal with this. Because you're sitting here thinking, how do I deal with it? No, that's a third, fourth level question. The question I want you to wrestle with is, if I did not deal with this, what would happen? Because once you come to the brutal reality that if I did not deal with this, this is going to happen, that will give you the courage needed to say, I'm going to cut my losses and deal with it right here and right now. People decisions are going to be the hardest decision you're going to make. So the three pathways there are, the first P stands for what? Process. Number two, product. Number two is process. And number three is people. I've got about 2 minutes left in this session. And what I want to do is to see if you have a question, I'd love to, we've been building towards this. Yes, please stand up so everyone can see you and speak up. What are the cancerous person is unsaved? Mm-hmm. So there'll always be a what if. So you never make a decision. Please hear, I'm bringing 30 years of this to you. You never want to make a decision based on a person. You make a decision as the leader of an organization based for what is good for the organization. If you base it on a person, you will make what we call situational decisions. If you make a decision based on what is good for the church, you're going to make a principled decision. So, the easier answer would be just focus on this person, look at their context, look what's going on, what has happened, how much movement they have actually made. So you would say to me, back in October they were here, but I see movement in their life. I see them getting better. They're trending in the right direction. You're going to give me all those indicators. But the real question is, okay. Do you all have a baseball team in Nebraska? Okay, let's just say you do. I'm just speaking life. Let's just say you do, and let's just call them the Nebraska what? Huskers. Yeah, let's go with that. I think you already have something like that, right? Okay, Huskers. And I am the coach, I'm the coach, the pastor. Brother Bob is my star pitcher. Star pitcher. He gets paid more than I get paid. People ask him for his autograph. Nobody asked me for my autograph. I'm the pastor. I'm the coach. He's the pitcher. I'm in the dugout. He's on the mound. Can you all get that picture in your head? He's on the mound. He's throwing balls, walking the batters. He's throwing lobbies so that he's getting all hit up. I'm the coach. People love him. You know, in my case, they may not. So I'm talking to you now. If you were the coach and you were his friend, what is your primary responsibility? Is it that the team wins or that you remain Bob's friend? What is your responsibility? Talk to me. You talk to me. Let the team win. So you would make what we call a principal decision, right? Now, how many of you know that you've never seen a pitcher walk off the mound happy? Because eventually, what are you going to do as a coach? So the first thing you're going to do is what? You're going to talk to me now. You're going to do what? You're going to do what? No, that's not the first thing you're going to do. You're going to walk out there. You're going to talk to him. You're going to settle him down. You're going to try to correct the situation. So you don't just jump to firing people. There's a process for that. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to talk to him. You're going to come back. But if he keeps doing what he was doing, now you're going to go there and do what? Pull him out. He's going to be all ticked off. He's going to be cussing. He's going to be mad. Oh, Christians cuss all the time. Because you have to make a decision, not based on what you like, not based on your friendship, not based on how it's going to play out for you. You have to make a decision as a pastor of a church for what is good for the church. And that's where the difference comes between situational decision making and principled decision making. Great question. Somebody else? Yes, sir. Very good question. Very good question. So this is what I've learned. It is better to have a vacancy than bad help. It is better to have a vacancy than bad help. Because bad help is detracting more from you on the seen and the unseen level, in the visible and the invisible. I went through that with my worship leader. Yeah. And I know this much, that as difficult as it was, everyone in the church knew it had to happen. And the same people did not like what happened. And that is where the conundrum comes in. They agree with you but dislike the decision. And that is why you are the pastor and they are not. But you got to differentiate between, am I here to be liked or am I here to be a leader? And sometimes it works out, you can do both. And sometimes those two things do not work out. But that is what you've been called to do. Anybody else? Okay, very good. So before we take a break, about